Driving.ca, we're testing a new EV whose name I can't necessarily say out loud lest the car listen in and chime in. This is the new Mercedes-Benz CLA, an EV, and the first of the new Mercedes-Benz modular architecture, or MMA, platform EVs. Launching initially as an electric before it comes later on as a hybrid, this thing brings a lot of really high profile and very visible changes over the previous generation. But the biggest news is stuff that's under the skin, because this here EV fits more than just a big battery for its range. No, they've advanced a lot here that makes this thing truly and really impressively efficient. So what are we looking at underneath? Well, it's an 85 kilowatt hour battery running some new chemistry, and that's actually just its usable capacity. This is routed through two motors here in these all-wheel drive models. Up front, it's just a straightforward radial flux like you're used to. Out back though, they are doing the Porsche Taycan thing, and it's got a 2-speed gearbox. That means that you've got a lot of torque available for low-end stuff, or for towing, or for acceleration. Not that this is necessarily meant to be a powerhouse. But then, over 110 kilometers an hour, it can switch into a sort of electric overdrive, a second gear that makes it more efficient, helps you get more out of it. This joins a host of other efficiency advancements, both in the inverters and the electronics, as well as just the mechanical components like smoother bearings. And while it may sound a little bit boring, it's something that's really worth paying some attention to, because you see, one of the big problems with EVs is inefficiency within its systems. Even before the aerodynamics or anything, if you're losing energy along the way just because a little bit rubs off here and there, well, that starts to really eat into your overall battery life. Here in the new CLA, Mercedes says that it's accomplished 93% efficiency from battery to wheels, though of course that does still leave the asterisk of the tires and their rolling resistance. Externally though, this is also helped by a very slick body. Mercedes has been doing very good work on making very aerodynamic bodies. Yes, they tend to look a little bit goofy, a little bit suppository, but here in the CLA, they seem to have found a respectable balance. It shares its styling more or less with the gasoline-powered hybrid model, and it accomplishes a drag coefficient of just 0.21. That is impressively, remarkably slippery. Looking back 10-15 years, this exceeds what we got from old supercars. This is phenomenally smooth, and it's something that manifests in more than just the aerodynamic efficiency and overall range. Out on the road, and especially on the highway, this thing proves impressively quiet. Though only running single pane windows all around instead of thicker noise insulating dual pane, wind noise in here is effectively a non-issue. This joins other noise, vibration, and harshness advancements as well. This is an all-around impressively, very thoroughly quiet ride. Now, part of that is going to be thanks to the very smooth road surfaces that we're enjoying here in Denmark. Back home, especially on chip tar and more coarse stuff, or once a car is on its second set of tires that may not be exactly the manufacturer's spec, well, you're probably going to see a little bit more drumming resonance. But as is so often the case with EVs, even the smallest thing can really start to show. We would normally expect to hear a lot more drumming underneath from the wheels, because in the absence of a gasoline engine that's sort of thrumming and filling the background with a bit of a din, here you're gonna hear anything that isn't just your environment. It contributes to an all-around exceptionally comfortable and, though I generally avoid the term in Mercedes-Benz products, almost luxurious experience. Yes, this is meant to be a premium vehicle, but Mercedes has had a way of sort of phoning things in over the last 10 or so years. This here though, by its quiet and especially the smoothness that joins that, well, we're getting into something that really is above what you would expect of this class of vehicle. Though just running your usual set of springs and dampers, this thing is very soft under compression, but without ever being bouncy on the rebound. It handles rather like a vehicle that's running on air suspension, and yet this is just simple, straightforward componentry underneath. Around us, of course, we come back to why I have some hesitations in using the luxury word with Mercedes, and that is that this does still feel, well, very contemporary Mercedes-Benz. Just as in the previous generation of products, we still have these piano black, almost brittle feeling plastic capacitive controls on the steering wheel. They weren't pleasant then, they still aren't pleasant now. We also still have very similar stocks to before. It's a lot of plastic around you. Ahead of the driver, the piano blacks continue, albeit in what is, in fairness, a new configuration. Mercedes here is debuting a new generation of its infotainment system. Based on what they call MBOS now, this new fourth generation of MBUX, or MBUX if you want to keep them happy, is a whole lot more powerful than before. There's more system processing power and all of that, And it runs, as is becoming increasingly popular, the Unity mobile game engine so that it can render 3D graphics. We're going to get to why those are important in a little bit. But what matters here is that the overall style and user experience feels largely the same. They made things a little bit more Apple-like. You can swipe and put your tiles in different folders and so on and so forth. And as is also now in vogue, the passenger can optionally have their own screen, another 14-incher, in addition to the primary 14-incher here in the middle. That screen, well, it's mostly redundant controls, and well, yeah, there's a selfie camera in it, I guess. That'll be fun when you're in the showroom and the salesperson wants you to see that, oh, there's all sorts of fun, clever tech in here. Fabulous. Don't buy a car based on that, for the love of God. Here in the center, the really big and noteworthy evolution, though, is in the Mercedes-Benz voice control, now rather dystopically integrating ChatGPT and some other AI language models. This here system, well, it has some clever features. It's still a little bit clumsy, though. Mercedes says that the whole point here is that you can ask it for things using natural language, and that is a good thing. To be able to ask it, hey, what are some restaurants around here, or whatever else have you. It's also a system that you can ask general knowledge questions, and using ChatGPT 4.0, it'll go back through anything that was on the internet prior to 2023, though anything more recent will be coming from Microsoft Bing results. By tying the two of these together, though, they say that they are able to cross-reference and to hopefully fact-check a little bit more of what comes through. And that's really quite important, because as we've seen and as people are starting to clue into, these AI language models aren't necessarily always reliable. Yes, there's a lot that can come through these very effectively summarized, and that can be very helpful for those who want something in a hurry. But we've also seen that they can just as readily buy into satirical news articles saying that St. John's is a quarter time zone ahead, and produce that as though it's authoritative fact. Outside of this, Mercedes also says that it has tone policed to make sure that the car isn't just going along and telling you where to buy drugs or how to buy a bomb. That doesn't sound much fun, but fair enough, liability is what it is. When you finish playing around with your voice prompts, though, you're going to spend most of your time looking forward. Optionally, you can have a head-up display in here, but the big news is going to be in this 10.25-inch primary digital cluster. The style is generally the same, but with a swipe to the right on this one capacitive panel, you can change it to a view of the road around you. Now, this isn't quite as clever as what you'll see in the Volvo, Geely, Lotus products, but Mercedes' idea here is basically to use that mobile gaming engine to be able to render the road and vehicles, buildings, cyclists, and pedestrians around you. According to Mercedes engineers, it has the potential to show up to 300 vehicles around you, but they figured that realistically 30 should be plenty and about 150 meters of road. And it does the job here. It's giving me a very clear and mostly reliable sense of what the car sees. That means that when I let off the pedal here and just let the adaptive cruise control do its thing, not to mention the lane keeping, that I trust that it sees this car ahead of me, that it understands when it's braking or signaling, and that it'll respond appropriately. Up to this point, Mercedes-Benz driver assists have been pretty solid as well. Their recent adaptive cruise control has been fairly smooth, and their lane keeping assistance was actually one of the first that actually felt comfortable and reliable to use. Reconciling data from cameras, long-range radar, and short-range ultrasonic sensors like are usually used for parking, the idea here is to significantly ease the driver's load, free up a lot of their bandwidth. And this is something that carries forward into route planning as well, or at least into the theory of it. You see, customer data apparently reflects that European drivers actually tend to use onboard navigation systems. In North America, though, this is a little bit more of a mixed bag, and it may end up contentious when things land. This new CLA, well, it's not going to be using the new enhanced version of Apple CarPlay that can take control of vehicle systems. They still want you to use this, and if you do, it will reward you with what are, to their credit, some sensible advancements. The biggest thing is that being an electric vehicle, your route planning will factor in charge stops, and in particular will now also consider the actual time at a given charger and apply some slightly more advanced logic to it. The big talking point there is that if it recognizes that running the battery down into a lower state of charge where it can hypothetically receive a greater speed of DC fast charging, that may justify splitting your charging into two separate DC stops along the route. Whichever way you decide to split up your long-distance charging responsibilities, there is hypothetically a pretty solid infrastructure underneath your seats here. Running an 800-volt system across those 85 usable kilowatt-hours of battery, Mercedes says that you're good for charge rates on DC fast chargers of up to 320 kilowatts. Of course, we're gonna have to wait to see how that actually responds at home. And obviously too, that comes with the caveat that that is preconditioned and in optimal conditions. What's really noteworthy with that though is that this new generation product will be coming to Canada with the new NACS standard, or classic Tesla style charge port. Mercedes will be including the typical CCS adapters back and forth because of course we're still working with parallel infrastructures there. But with any luck, the need for that should also hypothetically be reduced by the impressive range that this thing manages out of that set capacity. 85 kilowatt hours is a lot, you see, but it's not necessarily anything crazy. If you look at the Hyundai Ioniqs, those things are now pushing 84.7 in their extended range formats. Here, well, we don't have an official NRCan or American EPA figure yet, but applying the usual 85% rule to European WLTP standard, which generally runs the cars without their climate control on, we're looking at estimated figures for the entry-level 250 model of 673 kilometers. Here in the higher trimmed, more powerful and slightly thirstier CLA 350 model, we'd be looking at a calculated figure of some 655 kilometers. Now, again, we'll have to see what those count out to, but applying that same math to the general consumption estimates, we do actually see numbers that are commensurate with what we're getting on the road here. We've been seeing averages across country and highway driving of about 14.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That is impressive and yes, matches what's on paper there, but really, truly, that is properly respectable and indeed commendable efficiency out of an EV like this. What's better still is that thanks to its new chemistry and the configuration of its motors, Mercedes has actually started to address one of the really big concerns, which was that EVs are really just greenwashing our local consciences by offloading their carbon impact elsewhere. Mercedes insists that the carbon cost of producing one of these things is now some 40% less across the entire process. Now, this comes with the very big asterisk that a lot of that is presumably coming from the purchasing of carbon offset credits. But there are very hard, tangible points that are worth pointing out and giving credit for here. Of particular note, the drive motors themselves have significantly reduced the amount of rare earth metals that are required in their production. One example of this is thanks to the magnets configuration. Using a double V layout, they're able to basically concentrate the rare earths at the upper tips of a pair of V-shaped magnets within that rotor. That means that they're not wasting it where the flux isn't quite as impactful farther down in the V, and they're able to keep everything right out there, right by the stator windings to maximize the utility of what precious metals they have in there. We also have, as you might expect, a front-end disconnect system as well. Because you don't normally actually need full all-wheel drive traction, this is able to decouple the front and just to let those wheels spin free. This, Mercedes claims, is good for some 90% reduction in the power consumption that would otherwise be involved in powering that front end. In contrast then to the gasoline and hybrid models where that power is concentrated up front, that leaves most of the duties out there at the back, running through that more efficient torque-divided 2-speed transmission. Unfortunately for the enthusiasts though, that efficiency does rather mean that this isn't exactly a juicy high-performance vehicle. Depending on which model you get, you're looking at either 268 or 349 horsepower. Torque figures, well, for the 250, it's just 247 pound-feet. Or here in the taller model, you're looking at 381 pound-feet. Neither of those are really all that tremendous, especially for a car that's carrying the weight of all of that battery mass down in its floor, not to mention all of the safety equipment that actually makes that work. Switch it to sport mode and really bury your foot in it, and this is no Porsche Taycan. It's not meant to be. This is a premium everyday commuter car, and it's something that does that with a really, really distinct grace and something that I really appreciate and enjoy driving. Will this be better as an AMG? Well, it'll certainly be different, but then Mercedes hasn't actually shown us an AMG yet. In the interim and for the everyday consumer though, this here answers a whole lot. Mercedes hasn't yet confirmed Canadian trims or pricing details yet, so we can't be absolutely certain. But if they can position these things right, they could be offering something really rather compelling, and in a way that between the software and the black piano black plastics, I honestly don't want to admit. If we look back at previous years though and how Mercedes has priced its CLA product line, well, they've usually gone up $1,000 or $2,000 per year relative to each model. Beyond this, Mercedes typically seems to price its EQ electrified models at around $10,000 to $20,000 over their gasoline hybrid counterparts. If we run on that then, and knowing that these are going to debut as EVs, it's possible that they could conceivably end up bringing these 250s to Canada for about $65,000 or perhaps $75,000 for the higher trim. These numbers are, of course, really rather optimistic, but if Mercedes can somehow come to market with something priced around that, with this feature set, with this standard glass roof across all of its models, this is something that brings a little bit of gloss, but most importantly, a whole lot of really welcome and impressive efficiency and electrified advancements to this segment. This was never going to be a cheap car, but fortunately now it doesn't necessarily feel like a cheap car in the way so many of its predecessors have. It still has some of its frustrations. It still has those frustrating piano black plastics all around. And the AI integration, well, that is just plainly 1984 spooky, depending on who you ask. But beneath all of that, the actual advancements in the electric powertrain are something to celebrate. This is something that makes a high capacity battery a little bit more palatable, a little bit more conscionable. And in contrast to those that have predated it, well, that's a really worthwhile step forward. For Driving.ca, I'm Al Alder. For more EV news, reviews, specs, previews, tests, and all the rest, be sure to follow us online on Driving.ca.